Hello, my name is Lodrin, and welcome to the 2025 AP Score Reactions. Now, I know what you're thinking. Tall, athletic looking, ruggedly handsome. How does this guy take AP classes? But it might surprise you to find out that I'm a bit of a nerd, and as such, I did take 5 this year. I also took a 6th, which I self-studied for, that being AP Microeconomics. My other 5 are AP Chemistry, AP Calc BC, AP Seminar, AP English Literature, and then AP Macroeconomics. Now, two quick disclaimers before I open up College Board. The first being that I don't actually like AP scores that much. I think College Board as an organization is not great. The scores that they give you is a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. That really doesn't capture everything you did across a whole year. So I do believe that there's a lot more to your classes than just the final test results. For example, this year, I think I probably scored pretty decently on my calculus exam, but probably not so great on my chemistry exam, even though I feel like I learned a lot more in chemistry class simply because it was a harder class. So these scores are not reflective of who you are, they're not reflective of your intelligence in any way. Secondly, if you've watched a lot of AP score reactions like I have, you might have realized something, that this is not a great example of the average person. My scores are probably going to be pretty high because I spend an ungodly amount of time on school. And that's going to be the same across all the scores you see online. So when you're seeing these people online get all fives and then freak out when they get a single four, that's not the average. And getting threes and fours and just passing really does need to be your ultimate goal. But with that, let's look at these things that I sunk hours and hours into over this past year. Alright, sorry, my session timed out. Now let's open College Board. I believe it's in alphabetical order, so my first one should be AP Calc. No, of course I don't want that. Yes. Don't sign up for this. They basically sell your information, and you just get way too many emails. Ooh, I might have gone to the wrong place. Oh, here we go. Alright, so my first one is going to be AP Calculus BC. This is the one that I am the most confident for a few reasons. First of all, my teacher was one of the best I've ever had. She covered everything extremely well. I think every single person in our class did extremely well. The second reason is because I did the class on my own outside of class on Khan Academy, which I do for a lot of my AP classes, just partly for fun, but also just to help me do better. Sorry about the dog. And then the third reason is because the AP Calc exam has never been super difficult. Like, the actual stuff you're tested on is usually not the hardest part of the course. And this year in particular, I believe the 5 rate was like a 65%. So I would be very, very surprised if this was not a 5. Yep, there it goes. Calculus AB subscore, of course it's a 5. If I think you should take this class, I definitely do think you should, especially if you're planning on doing anything slightly related to math in college, because you'll probably have some calculus that you could possibly get out of with the college credit. I also just think calculus in general is a really interesting field to study. Like, there's a reason I did it my junior year instead of AP Stats, because while AP Stats is interesting, calculus is a lot harder, and you'll learn a lot more this way. So I do think you should take it. And here's the one I'm scared for, AP Chemistry. This is my favorite subject of all time. But I'm not sure if I did great on the exam. I'm not super confident. The whole year I excelled in class. I did really well on tests. I did really well on all the homework. But once the exam hit, I didn't feel great on the FRQs, but I also did do really well on the MCQs. So this really could go either way. The one thing I'm scared about is there are only 2 people in the history of my school to get 5s on this exam, and I know both of them, and they're both extremely smart students, so that's a little scary. Some of the people I know didn't get a 5, I'm like, well, if they didn't get a 5, how will I? So my prediction would be a 4, but a 5 here would be possible. Oh my gosh! Oh, that feels so good, dude. Like, literally the rest of my life is going to be chemistry. That's what I'm studying in college. So that is that feels really good to hit. Um Shoot, if I like I'm gonna be one of those people that gets all high scores, except for this one. AP Lit. I really, really did enjoy this class. My teacher, I've known her for a while. She's my quizbowl coach. She's also really interested in literature, and she showed us a bunch of good stuff. We read The Book Thief, Great Gatsby, Pilgrim's Progress, a lot of other really good literature in the class. The one thing I'm scared of is that obviously being in English class, you're not necessarily preparing for the exam at every point. Like we'd have scattered help with the essays, and I think my essays went amazing. But the multiple choice section on AP Lit is just so difficult. Oh, sorry, we need to go back to chemistry real quick, which we will after AP Lit, and I need to talk about whether or not you should take that class. I'm a speech and debate kid, as you can see, but it does mean I yap a lot and often lose my train of thought. As far as AP Lit goes, I'm predicting a 4. I wouldn't be surprised by a 3. If my essays were randomly really good, I guess it could be a 5, but I do think it's unlikely that it's a 5. But I have a lot of friends in the class, and they said they got 5s, and I'm like, well, if this many people got a 5, maybe I have a chance. Here we go. Oh! Shoot. Oh my gosh, a 5 in Lit. Oh, it's so sad to get emotional about this, but this is what my life has been for the past year. Like when you take 5 AP classes and you're putting all your time into school, it's a ton of fun for me because I love school, but it's also really scary because you're putting all your time into this, and this number is all you get out of it. But once again, this number is not the end of it. And just because you get a low score in one of these classes, it's not going to mess up your college prospects. You don't have to submit scores to colleges if you don't want to. And you can still do anything you want, even if you didn't score high in that class. And then, as far as if you should take these classes, if you're at all interested in science or chemistry, I think you need to take AP Chemistry. Chemistry is just such an amazing subject. Uh, this is in organics, which I think organics even more fun, but I do think chemistry is super good to take, and I would highly suggest that all of you take it. As far as AP Lit goes, I think if your school offers an AP Lit class, you need to judge it off the class because the curriculum that you're studying for the exam really is not that extensive. And honestly, if your class is only focused on the exam, that's not going to be a very fun class. But if you like taking high level English classes like I do and like reading lots and lots of books, this might be the right choice. But do not take this class because you want to take this exam. If I'm not mistaken, it's going to be my 2 econs next. This is where it gets interesting. Macroeconomics is the only one we did in class. We had a full year for it, so you would think our class did it super easily. However, our teacher, she was new, and nothing against her. She's a really nice person, but she didn't fully understand what was going on. But to my credit, I took most of this class. I watched every single video on College Board, and I did most of Khan Academy. This is the only class I watched the College Board videos, and I want to say that those videos are actually pretty helpful. I haven't seen a ton of people talk about this when they discuss AP classes, but those videos definitely, if you're willing to put in the time to watch all of them, are really good. Obviously, it's a big investment, and something like Jacob Clifford or ReviewEcon.com on YouTube are going to be a lot quicker, but the College Board videos are definitely helpful. As far as Clifford and Review Econ go, as I did macroeconomics and I self-studied microeconomics, I would suggest Review Econ actually, unless you're willing and have enough money to throw away to buy Clifford's Ultimate Review packet. I don't think his videos are really useful. And I think Review Econ has so many great FRQ practices, great unit summaries that you can study for the class purely off of Review Econ and something like Khan Academy, which is what I did for microeconomics. So with that, I'm 99% certain I got 5s on both of these. I knew almost every single MCQ. These are some of the easiest AP classes. It's not necessarily something I was ever scared for. Yep, there's a 5 on macro. I'll go straight to micro. There's a 5. Was that because I self? Oh no, it's just different. As far as if you should take these classes, these are usually paired into a single year class, and I think it's one of the best classes you can take, just because economics is really fun. It's filled with great concepts, and if you enjoy learning about economics will be one of the most fun times you had. Learning about all the different graphs, learning about how everything shifts, if you're willing to put in the time and effort, can be a ton of fun. Now, if you don't like taking classes for the learning aspect and more for the credit and for graduation purposes, I think only take this class if you see it being useful in college. Because I don't think this class is great for personal finance, Our class had a bit of financial literacy, we called it, where we did learn about things like car payments, house payments, and the stock market. But in a normal AP Econ class, you're not necessarily going to get that. So if that's not something you're guaranteed, I would not suggest taking these classes. What I will say though is once again, if you want to learn the subject, econ in general is super interesting. I have two friends that went to top colleges for econ. I've been talking to them and they absolutely love it. The things you can do in college with economics are really, really cool. And then worst case scenario, if you don't like it in college, it's really easy to fall back on something like accounting or just finance or business because it kind of goes in that same sphere. All right, one left. AP seminar. If you know anything about AP seminar, this is the most random one because it's a six-part uh, exam. You have six different things working into your own advantage. And I guess I'm just going to talk about them all real quick. Once again, I'm sorry for yapping so much. I do extemporaneous speaking. I love just extending things as long as possible. Um, my first part for my individual IWA, which is an individual research report you do, it's like basically a persuasive essay. I talked about Japanese internment. I talked about how it's often not discussed enough in schools and how we can better use Japanese internment to learn for the future. I was a really big fan of my topic. Obviously, research is hard when you try something specific, but I think all my connections to the sources were great. I heavily connected it to things like false nostalgia, to the one from Colin Powell, and I think both of these connections worked really well for my thing. And that translated to my IMP, which is my proudest part of AP seminar, which is when you go up, give a 10-minute speech. We get to dress up in suits. I like wearing suits. So that was a great experience. I think my IMP went really, really well. I talked a little too fast, as I'm doing now, but those first two parts are good. Where it gets scarier is with the other four. The next part is the IRR. This is a research report you do with a group where you each do an individual report on one aspect of a topic. We were talking about Social Security reform and how to fix it and how to make it better because it's set to run out in 5 to 10 years. I really, really did like this topic even more than my other topic. The research was all there. I was really proud of my IRR. I'm not sure about the TMP though. Nothing against my teammates. They're both really good speakers, great presenters. I just think in general we weren't super put together to the level we could be, especially when we got to the oral defense. I think there's a chance I lost some there. However, the TMP is not a big part of my grade, so I'm still hopeful for a 5. And then as far as the rest goes, we had two parts on the final exam. The first part, you're analyzing a source. They gave us a wild source on the exam. It had so many pieces of information, so much evidence. You're supposed to analyze every bit. Nobody did. You're also supposed to take 30 minutes on this part. I took an hour on this part. And the second part is an argumentation essay. We're given some sources. You basically write an IWA, but instead of doing it beforehand, you do it during the exam. And this part I loved because this is really fun. You can be creative. You can write your own argument. I wrote a really cool argument about polarization and how democratic power has increased polarization in America and ways in which we can stop that. And I was actually really proud of this part. So I am hopeful for a 5 in AP seminar, but it really comes down to your graders. And as such, I am predicting a 4. The other reason I'm predicting a 4 is because I have a friend who took 6 APs their junior year, same as me, got 5 5s, got 1 4, and that 1 4 was AP seminar. But we shall see. Oh my gosh. I mean, okay, so all the AP tests are made a lot easier this year. If you look at the pass rates online, you can look them up. They're way higher than they realistically should be, but I'm still really happy with this. As far as what you should do about AP Seminar is I think you should only take this class if you love doing research, or if you really want to take AP research, which AP Seminar is a prerequisite to. Unless you live in one of the two states that requires AP credit to be accepted, I live in one of them, being Ohio. Most colleges are not going to accept AP Seminar for any credit. It's a newer class, it's a weird class, it's also more expensive than other AP classes. So I'd say unless you're fascinated by the subject matter, unless you're really interested in writing these essays, and that's something you enjoy, do not take AP Seminar just for the credit. I would actually say that about most AP classes. Generally, the credit might not even transfer. If it's something like chemistry, I'm going to be majoring in chemistry. I'm not going to be able to use my AP Chem 5 to get out of any classes in college because I'm majoring in AP chemistry. Therefore, I think the real reason you should be taking AP classes is because you enjoy them or because it's a subject that interests you. And that's the key, I think, is how I was able to stay so locked in this year. The reason I was able to do well on 5 APs is not just because I consider myself pretty decent at school, it's also because I loved it and I enjoyed it. In every moment, I tried and tried to do better, to learn more, and to get the good grade. Because ultimately, the AP classes are only going to be as good as the effort you put into them. Therefore, I think the best way to do something like this, to get fives or even just get passing scores, is just to like what you're doing so that you put more effort into it. Because ultimately, that's all that's really going to matter in the grand scheme of things. What you yourself take out of it, not just what it does to your GPA or your college resume. So, with that, this has been the biggest nerd on the internet, Lodrin, and I'm out.